Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Leroy Funsweet, and today I'm going to be going through the first episode of the Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Rocket League, which is going to be based on the options or settings in the game. So I'm going to start by going through all the different options available to you in the game, and when by saying what we're going to go through in the next episode. Alright, so first of all, if you want to go to the options menu, you can do that either in the pause menu when you're in a game, in training, or you can do it at the main menu, which I'll show you now. So you have the options just there. Alright, so I'm going to go back into training so I can demonstrate what most of these options do. So let's start with the unlimited boost in free play. Now this option was only added very recently. I have actually had to re-record this video due to the options changing. So if you have this enabled, you're going to have unlimited boost in free play training. If you have it disabled, you're going to be it's going to be like you're in a game and you're just going to have to pick up boost as you normally do. If you have this enabled, you can do pretty much whatever you want. You can do stuff like just fly around like this and not have to bother about your boost. If you have it off, of course, you're going to have to pick up boosts, and it's going to be more realistic to how you actually play the game. So if you'd like your training to be a bit more realistic, then you can turn this off and you can pick up boost and practice shots as you would in a match without any opposition. Next up, we've got the text chats. So these chat options for voice chat and text chat are pretty much the same, except text chat will obviously be the text chat that's enabled in the top left corner of the screen. If you have this on allow all, you'll be able to see both your teammates and the opposition's team chats. If you have it on quick chat only, you won't see any text typed text chat in the game, which if you're on Xbox you can do by pressing the menu or select button. I'm sure it'd be like select on PlayStation as default as well. I'm not sure about PC, and you probably just press enter or something. So this will enable it so you can only use the quick chat options available to you in the game, which you can use using the directional buttons or the D-pad. Team quick chat only means you won't be able to see any opposition's quick chat options. They won't be able to see any of your quick chat. It will only be visible by your team and to your team. Team only, again, it's exactly the same as the team quick chat only, except you can use typed text messages as well, or you can disable it entirely. Next is, as I said, this is pretty much the same as text chat, so you can either allow all, team only, or disable it, but this is going to be for the voice chat enabled in the game if you have a microphone and you're not in a party. Next up, you've got the split screen layout, so either horizontal or vertical. I would recommend putting it on horizontal, as it will give you a wider field of view when playing on split screen, rather than having the split for the screen going up and down, which would be vertical through the center of the screen. It would be going left to right through the center of the screen. Next up, you have the cross-platform play. So if you have this enabled, you will be able to play with players on other platforms. If you're on Xbox, it'll be mostly PC, I believe, and Nintendo Switch. If you're on PlayStation, it'll be again PC and Nintendo Switch. If you're on PC, it'll be Xbox and PlayStation and Switch. I'm sure it'd be the same if you're on Switch. Next, you've got the send rates. So this is going to control the amount of packets that your client receives and sends to the server. By default, this will be on high. I would recommend to keep it on high. I believe if you have a slightly lower quality internet, this would be best to have this on high. I'm not really sure if there's any benefits to lowering it if you have better or worse internet. But I would definitely recommend playing around with it and see what's best for you. Next up, you've got the key selection. So with this, you will either be able to use the newest key, oldest key, or be asked prior to opening the crate. So say you wanted to get rid of your trade lock, all keys will come automatically with a 7-day trade lock. As soon as you use the key, whatever item you get out of the crate, you won't be able to trade for 7 days. Now, if you've had the keys for more than 7 days and you use the oldest keys, and if you've just purchased new keys, you will be able to use the oldest keys and get rid of the trade lock. If you use the newest, of course, you will get the trade lock. Next up, you have the option to hide crates. So I actually have this option enabled now. When I previously recorded this video, I didn't actually have this enabled, purely because I was opening crates, and I opened a hell of a lot of crates. I spent a hell of a lot of money on it, money that I don't actually have available to me to spend. I had a little bit of an issue with it, but now that I've got this enabled, I won't see any crates in my inventory. I won't see any crates that I get at the end of a game when it pops up saying that you've the crate or whatever it is. So that will take away that option entirely. If you have this deselected, you will be able to see all of the crates in your inventory or notifications at the end of the game when you receive one. With the camera options, I will go through this in a separate episode because it's pretty detailed. So we'll skip over to the controls for now. So first of all, we're going to go through the bindings. So with this, you can map pretty much anything in the game to any button on your controller. If you wanted to change the power slide, for example, to LB, you just select this option and it will say press any button to bind, so you can move that to LB or L1 or whatever console you're using. You can change that. I'd like to keep that on X myself, but there are other options here available. So the air roll right and air roll left aren't actually automatically bound. I've enabled air roll right, so I've enabled air roll right so that I can do sort of like a stall shot sort of thing, where you do a flip and it doesn't actually flip. So that's like if you do a side flip, but if you hold left on the analog stick as you jump and air roll right and do a flip, it'll do that instead. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the key bindings. As I say, you can change pretty much anything. I'll show you what you've got, like ball cam, rear view, scoreboard, music track, how to skip the music tracks, voice chat, So if you've got the option here for push to talk enabled, you will have to hold down whatever button you've got mapped to voice chat to allow other people in the game to hear your voice. You only have one voice. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for that. Next up, you've got the controller vibration. So again, this is going to be a very personal preference. If you prefer to feel the vibration of the controller when you're playing, you can turn this up or turn it down, or you can disable it entirely. I tend to have mine on heavy. It does make it a little bit easier for me when I'm playing the game, but I do know a few people that have controller vibration disabled on every game that they play, just because it's more comfortable for them. So again, play around with that if you want to, see what's more comfortable for yourself. Next up, we've got the dead zones and sensitivities. So they are very similar to each other, although the dead zone's going to sort of dictate how the sensitivities work. So the dead zone itself basically is how far you have to move your joystick from the center for it to be registered in the game. So if you have this on a lower setting, for example 0, you'd barely have to move the analog sticks at all. So I'm not moving it much at all, and you can see that I'm turning quite a lot, quite easily. It works the same with the aerials as well, so you won't have to move it as much for the aerials to work. For the aerial movement to be sort of higher sensitivity. If you have this higher up, it'll feel like the aerial sensitivity is lower. So if I was to put this on the maximum setting, you can see that I have to move my analog stick quite far for it to even register. So I've got that about halfway down at the moment, and it's not moving at all. If I move it a little bit more down, you can see that it starts to register, and all the way down is just like normal. I usually keep this fairly central, about 0.35. It does also depend on how your controller's joysticks work. So if your joysticks are sort of quite stiff, it's going to be better for you to have a lower dead zone. And if you're pretty much playing on a new controller, you can put this a little bit higher to make it a little bit easier for you to control the car's movements. The dodge dead zone is just how far you have to move your stick from the center for the dodge to work instead of a double jump. So if you find that you're backflipping a lot, or if you're double jumping more than you're flipping, so if you do intend to do a flip and you double jump, you'll want to turn that down a bit. And if you want to do a double jump and you flip, you want to turn that up. So I have to move the analog stick quite far out at the moment for me to get a flip, otherwise it just double jumps. I tend to have that fairly high, just so it's easier for me to do what I want to do without making any mistakes. Although, of course, it doesn't matter what you do. Of course, you will make mistakes because you are human. Just try not to dwell on it and try and improve on your thumbstick movement and registration. And the steering sensitivity is basically how sensitive the joystick is when you're steering on the ground. If you have this higher up, it's going to be like having a low controller dead zone. So it'll make it easier for you to move around with less movement on the analog stick. If you have this lower down, it's going to be like having a higher dead zone. So you can sort of play with them. I'd recommend to use them with each other. So if you turn the dead zone up, turn the sensitivity up, and if you turn the dead zone down, put the sensitivity down. Again, with the aerial sensitivity, it is affected by the controller dead zone as well. But if you've got a good controller dead zone that's comfortable for you, and you move the aerial sensitivity to a lower or higher setting, you will notice that the car's movements when you're in the air, sort of just like this, just like not the air roll. So the air roll won't be affected; it will be just as the same speed as normal. But the normal movements like this, when you move your analog stick in the air, will be affected. So I'll show you now what that's like on the lower settings. So with here, I'll just pull the analog, I'll just move the analog stick around so you can see sort of the movements. So I'm just going to do a circle when I'm in the air. And if we turn that all the way up, it's going to be a lot harder to control. So the smaller movements will be like moving the analog stick all the way. So yeah, it's going to be more difficult to control. If you're doing something like an air dribble or something a little bit more advanced, I'd recommend to turn this option down a bit, although it is completely up to you if you're comfortable with a higher setting. I like to keep mine on a fairly low setting because I like to have quite a lot of control over my car. Next up, you've got the ball camera mode, so you can either have it so that it toggles or to hold it. So this will be whatever button you have mapped for your ball cam. If you have it on toggle, you'll be able to just sort of tap the button and it will toggle on or off of ball cam. If you have this option on hold, it will be off ball cam constantly unless you're holding the button. If you let go of the button, it will come off of ball cam. Holding the button goes on and letting go goes off. Personally, I like to keep this on, but this never used to be an option. You used to have to hold it down. So I'm very grateful for this option now, because I would not be able to do that and jump and boost and stuff at the same time. It's just too much. Next up, you've got the interface options. So for this, you've got first of all the interface scale. So it's just going to be the size of the interface for the game, the UI. It will affect the area at the bottom that has your banner and your name and your level and your party, etc. And also the music. It will also affect the options menu. So if I turn this all the way down, you can see this menu now is tiny. Again, this is all personal preference, whatever you think is easiest for you. I like to keep this at a normal default 100%. Next up, you've got the nameplate scale. So the nameplate scale is going to be the plates above the cars in the game. So if you're playing even in an exhibition match, it will show the bots with their names above the car. If you're playing an online match, it will show other players in the game's names or gamer tags above the car. If you have this on 100%, which is default, they're going to be pretty visible from all around the map. The higher you put it, of course, they're going to be bigger and larger and more visible, and the lower you put it, they're going to be less visible. Next up, you've got the nameplate mode, so you can have it so that they're always visible. You can have it default, which I believe is the further away the car is from you. If you're far away from an opponent or a teammate's car, you won't see the nameplate. When they reach a certain distance from you, it will load in. I believe it's the same for the simplified version as well. Although definitely check it out for yourself and see how it is for you. I like to keep them always visible because my eyesight's not so great, and it's nice to know just seeing a blue or an orange title above the person's head, or nameplate, whatever you want to call it. Just makes it easier for me to read the plays and read what's going on in the match. Next up, you've got the connection quality indicators. So these will be on the right hand side of your screen. If you have it enabled, you'll see when you're experiencing connection issues, which will be sort of a latency variation, packet loss, server issues, anything like that. I will show in a moment what that looks like and what each of them are. Next up, you have the colorblind mode. So if you have this enabled, it will override all team cars all team and car colors with high contrast orange and blue colors. So if the person's got a red car, for example, it will be orange and it will be high contrast, so it will be very easily visible. So if you're colorblind, for example, and your teammate's got a blue car that he's got in colors that pretty much look orange, he's using a decal that takes up most of the car, and they put orange on it, so it looks like they're on the other team. That will be, you'll completely get rid of that. It would be a lot easier for people with colorblindness, although personally I've never used it. I can imagine it could be really helpful. Next up, you've got the competitive divisions. So if you have this enabled, it will show what division you're in. Let me go back to the main menu and show you this. Alright, so here you can see on the competitive play options, I've got Diamond 1 Division 3, Diamond 1 Division 4. If I was to disable this option, you can see now it just says Diamond 1. I'm not really sure why people would use this personally. I'd like to keep mine on because I like to know when I'm going to go up a division or an entire rank. Some people don't like to know that, so you can turn it off if that's what you'd prefer. Alright, so I'm going to go back into training now to show you the next option, which is to have metric enabled. So if you have metric enabled, it will display the speed of the goal in the metric unit rather than the imperial. In the UK, we generally use the imperial unit, so you can see at the bottom there, 54 miles per hour. If I was to enable this, so now you'll see it's in kilometers per hour, which I believe is what most of America uses and a few other countries. Personally, I like to keep this in imperial because it's what I understand. I understand imperial measurements rather than metric. Next up, you've got the ball cam indicator, which will tell you when you're on ball cam. So if I disable ball cam and enable it, there's the only thing that will tell you that you're in ball cam or out of ball cam is the arrow that appears above the car. If I enable this now and go onto ball cam, you can see in the bottom left corner it says that I'm on ball cam, and if I'm off of it, it will disappear and reappear if I go back on it. The ball arrow will be the indicator for when you're not on ball cam, to tell you where the ball is. So I've got it disabled now. I've got ball cam off, and you can see it doesn't show where the ball is. If I go put that back on, you can see now there's an arrow that shows the direction of the ball. So next up, we've got the video settings. So vertical sync, first option, will synchronize your frame rate with the display's refresh rate. So it will, if you have this enabled, it will keep your frames up. But if you have it enabled, it may also increase input delay. If you disable it, it may decrease input delay, but you will more than likely drop some frames at some point, which can be quite distracting if you're in a sort of high pressure game. Personally, I like to keep this on because the console's input delay is pretty bad anyway, especially in comparison to PCs. So having this on isn't really much of a problem for me on console. So next up, we've got the weather effects. So this will enable and disable effects like rain and fog if you're in a match with like a rainy arena. You'll see the rain on the pitch. If you have it disabled, that'll get rid of it entirely. Personally, I like to have this disabled, as I just find things like rain and fog to be a distraction in the game. It's not completely necessary, and it just makes it a little bit more, I don't know, it just adds sort of an atmosphere. Adds an atmosphere to the game, but I like to personally have that off. Next up, we've got the light shafts. So this will be literally just like on a sunny map where the sunlight sort of beams through. That will get rid of that. Make it a little bit less bright, a little bit less distracting on the pitch. Next up, you've got transparent goalposts. So I'll actually show you this one now. So if I'm in the net, you can see that the goalposts are transparent. This never used to be like this. It used to be solid constantly. If I was to disable that now, you can see that it would make it a little bit more difficult to see through. Although on Champions Field, I'd say it's not that difficult. There are some maps where it's almost impossible to see through there if you've got this disabled. So I would recommend having this on, although again it is a completely personal decision. Next up we've got the audio options, which are pretty self-explanatory. You've got master volume, which will control the volume of everything. Gameplay volume, which will control volume of gameplay sound effects, which would be like boosting and accelerating and things like that. Then you've got the music volume, so you can have the music louder. You can have it turned down if you'd prefer. Voice volume, so that'd be for voice chat. Ambient volume will be ambient sounds in the world, so if you're on like Aquadome, for example, and you hear like the whales from outside of the map, that will get rid of that completely if you have that turned down. You have the crowd volume. I believe the ambient volume as well would be the commentator. And you've got the crowd volume, so this will be the cheering and things like that, so you can get rid of that entirely or turn that up. That's completely up to you. Output type, so I have this on headphones because I use headphones to play. If you don't use headphones and you have speakers, definitely whack that on speakers. Personally, I don't usually see much of a difference with it, but it's there for a reason, I suppose. Lastly, on this section, you have the in-game music. So until recently, before the tournaments update, this wasn't actually a feature. So now you can have it always on, so it's on during matches, during training, and at the main menu. You can have it for matches only, training only, or off. Next up, you've got the chat options. So again, these are pretty personal. The team options will only be visible by teammates. So try and keep that as sort of informational things if you can. You don't have to, of course. You can have it as things like sorry or sick or whatever. It's completely up to you. Of course, if you have the team chat only option here, everything that you do will only be visible by your team, even the compliments, reactions, etc. But you can mix these up. You don't have to do them like this. You don't have to have reactions as reactions or compliments as compliments. You can mix it up. You can put reactions in the left D-pad slot or whatever you want to do. Alright, so that's about it for this episode, guys. Look forward to seeing you in the next episode, which will be based on the camera settings. Until then, peace.